Hello, everybody. My name's Jed. I'm a substance abuse counselor. I've been working in my field as a substance abuse counselor and a relapse prevention specialist for approximately 7 years now. And wanted to share a little bit about my story, both working in treatment as well as my journey as a heroin addict for a very long time. And I've had this idea for a while, that I either wanted to write a book or do something. And I guess I've been inspired by other folks that I've seen doing video logs and whatnot. And no idea if this is going to take off or it's just going to be something I do for me. But I want to do this and try to reach a wider audience with my message and what I've been through and what the people I work with go through every single day. Um, uh, so basically, like I said, I've been working in recovery for about 7 years. I started out my journey working with state parolees coming to treatment as an alternative to incarceration on their way back to society. Did that for a couple of years at a little place called Turning Point, and then kind of worked my way up through the ranks of high-end places that cost $60,000-$70,000 a month. Got really sick of, frankly, working with kids who were only there because mommy and daddy were going to kick them out of the house if they didn't get clean, who ended up shooting dope in the parking lot on their way out after wasting their parents' retirement fund. So I got offered an opportunity to work with incarcerated people at the in the jail setting. And it's where I feel like I found my calling. I've been able to write programs that are now used in the jail, and it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done with my life. And it's where I hope to live out my career. Anyway, just to give you a little introduction as far as myself, I went to treatment about 13 or 14 times, and I say that, believe me, that is not a bragging statement. That is the worst, but it's mainly just to say that I've seen a lot of what doesn't work, and over the last 8 years or so, I've seen a little bit of what does work finally. I've got clients that I've worked with everywhere, hundreds of people, some of whom are killing it, doing great. I got one guy who's a professional chef for a sober music artist traveling the world, drops me a line every year to say thank you, and then I've got plenty who are in the ground, who are never coming back. And it's just the nature of this beast. I like to joke. I like to make my clients laugh. I like to have a good time, but I also never want to lose track of the fact that this shit kills people. So a little bit of my journey and how I got clean. I discovered opiates when I was around 11 years old. I had a dislocated shoulder. I don't know if you can see it, but I've had multiple surgeries to fix it over the years. And I got introduced to opiates. And basically, back then in 1992, 93, I guess, they didn't really think twice about giving an 11-year-old kid two 10-milligram Norcos every 2 hours. It's like taking 4 Vicodin every 2 hours at 85 pounds, 11 years old. No shit, I got high. And, a little bit older, things progress, and I got to a point where the pills weren't cutting it anymore, too much Tylenol. And I remember the dope man one day held up a needle full of black stuff, said, "Hey, I can give you this for $10. I couldn't even look. I remember holding my arm out so that he could hit me. And around 15, 16 years old, and it went from there. So I'll spare you all the details, but I was hit by a truck going 40 miles an hour when I was 18 years old in a crosswalk. Almost killed me, skidded across my head for about 15 feet. And, from then on, especially back in that era with the OxyContin era and whatnot, I could get whatever I wanted whenever. So I'm not going to give you every detail of my life, but suffice it to say, opiates ruled me for the next 20 years. And so basically, after about 16 years of shooting heroin and later on IV speedballs, I got to a point where I was just destroyed. I wanted to get clean. I didn't know what to do. And I felt like I'd tried everything. So the very last week that I used dope was early November 2016. And I remember something felt different about it. I was a veteran at this point. I didn't overdose anymore. I knew what I was doing. But I overdosed 3 times that last week. And I'm convinced now that it's because that was the week, literally, that fentanyl hit Sonoma County. And this sounds crazy. Some of you might not even believe me, but my habit had reached a point where I was literally using horse tranquilizer needles because I couldn't fit enough dope in a standard 100cc 29 gauge needle anymore. And so the very last time I ever used, that's what I wanted to get to here. I don't want to war story too much, but the very last time that I actually used, I feel like it's important for me to share, was definitely a coming to Jesus moment for me. I had this literally horse tranquilizer needle, big fat tip on it, gigantic motherfucker, and pardon my French, and I remember the guy who gave it to me, who sold it to me, told me, be careful. There's something different about this. Be careful. Now remember, the size of my habit had gotten to the point where I didn't think twice about putting that thing straight into a main artery and shooting the whole thing. But I remember he told me that, and I had already fallen out twice that week, so I was a little bit scared. I say scared, but I think in reality I didn't give much of a shit about living or dying at that point. So I took that thing, and instead of putting it into smaller rigs like I should have done, I went right in between the bicep and the tricep here into a big main artery, and it's different when you hit an artery. It doesn't just register. The needle explodes. But that's what happened, and I registered, and I'll never forget, I had only meant to tap the plunger just a little bit to see what happened, but I pushed it half the way down. And I looked at it, and I remember thinking, oops, uh-oh. And then my next thought was, oh, well, fuck it. And I pushed it the rest of the way down. Now, I woke up 5-6 hours later, something like that, and I don't know whether it's the universe, maybe there really is a God, and just figured I wasn't done yet. I don't know what to say, but for some reason, I woke up, and I remember it felt like I was hot pokers in all of my fingers and toes, because as I'd later learn, I probably was barely breathing, and very little oxygen was going through my bloodstream at that point. Again, I shouldn't have woken up. By all logic, I should not have. It took me years of work and therapy and whatnot to finally come to understand that that was a very thinly veiled suicide attempt. I like to say I've never been suicidal, and I don't think I have been, but apparently in that moment, I essentially was. It was more than just chasing a high. But when I woke up, still high out of my mind, I sat there with a whole bunch more dope, with a bottle of Jack Daniels, and I basically had a decision to make. Did I want to get clean one more time? Try yet again? Or did I want to fill up the rig with so much dope that I knew I wouldn't wake up and do it again? And I had an epiphany. Some people call it the burning bush moment or the aha moment. Well, I had one. It dawned on me that, sorry, I get a little emotional talking about it. It dawned on me that I'd never given recovery 100% of myself. I'd never done it. I'd always gone 80%, 90%, but I always wanted to do it my way. There was no, I'll do anything. And so I decided in my arrogance and whatnot, I decided that, well, I know I'm unique. I know I'm fucking different than everybody else, which is why it hasn't worked for me yet, right? And so I thought, well, I can't go out without being able to say that I gave it everything. Then when it doesn't work for me, I can go out and say, see, I told y'all. So I thought, all right, this time I went begging to my mom. And keep in mind, my parents were barely speaking to me by this time. But I went to my mom and I said, please, please send me to treatment one more time. And my mom, God, love her so much, she said, get in the car. She took me to Azure Acres. She paid for 28 days on a credit card and left me there. And that's the biggest gift I've ever been given in my life, because I went in with the attitude that I'm going to do everything they tell me to do. I'm not going to get a sponsor and refuse to work steps. I'm not going to do this, but not that. My attitude was, I will pray to a plastic fucking water bottle if you tell me it'll keep me clean one more day. So that's the attitude I went in with, still thinking in my heart and soul that this won't work for me. Well, here we are, a little over, 8 years later? And I'll be the first to tell you, I have not been perfect in my recovery. I've had things go wrong. I've done things I wished I hadn't done. I've gotten married and had a divorce. You know, plenty. It has not been perfect. It's not all rainbows and freaking unicorns. But the one thing I have not done the one thing I've done perfectly is I've never stuck a needle in my body again. And I never will. Okay, I'm comfortable saying that at this point. So when I got clean, one of the things that I say a lot to folks is, and it sounds kind of horrible to say, but it's the truth, is I feel like the fentanyl epidemic actually saved my life. Because as desperate as I was to get clean, my habit of get clean, get a job, do well for a few months and relapse. Get clean, do well, get a job, relapse. I mean, it was such an established pattern. Like I said, I've been to treatment like 13 times already. Various kinds of treatment anyway. And so, but all of a sudden when I got clean, on top of the knowledge that the last few times I used, almost certainly there was fentanyl in it, all of a sudden my friends started dropping dead left and right, what few friends I still had left. started dropping dead. And you know, then there's a big article in the paper back in December 2016, I think it was, and just talking about fentanyl is no longer an East Coast problem. It's here. And so any last thoughts I had about, oh man, but that rush, I could do it one more time, you know, kind of went out the window, because instead of playing Russian roulette with one bullet in the chamber, it's like playing with 5 out of 6 bullets in the chamber. You know, maybe you get lucky and you get one high, but 5 times out of 6, you're gonna die. And so I just continued that journey with an almost angry ferocity about staying clean each day. And, you know, I can honestly sit here and tell you, every single time I wanted to get high, which was bad, it took me almost 6 months of kicking, of not sleeping well, of waking up at 3 in the morning and writing music instead of sleeping and things like that, before I remember it was about 6 months before I actually slept for 8 solid hours and woke up and didn't want to just throw myself out of the bed. That's what 20 years straight of opiate use does to you. It takes more than a few days of kicking to feel better. But I had this angry determination to get better and to get past it. And you know, in the process, I got what I really consider my first big boy job. I got to work doing real neat stuff with computer-driven robotics. Started as an accounting job anyway. And then shortly after, though, I had about 7 months clean. And my dream had always been, ever since I had my first substance abuse counselor, to go and become a counselor. And I'd actually, even when I was getting high, I'd taken certain classes and whatnot. And at one point was a psychology major. So I had everything I needed to go be an intern. And Turning Point hired me. And very shortly after that, I became the state parole counselor for Turning Point. That's a whole story in its own right. Maybe I'll cover on another day. Anyway, this has been kind of scattered and all over. I don't even know if I'll post it, but this is something I've been meaning to do for a while. I've got a hell of a story to share in my own right, and also have been keeping little bits and pieces from, in fact, I plan to write a book called My Life in Treatment, which is going to be mainly my story of working with people, obviously with names redacted and everything for HIPAA and confidentiality, but some fantastic stories. You know, stories I've seen 20 people high on acid, half naked, walking down the halls of a treatment center at midnight. You know, I've got all sorts of good stories, and I want to laugh, but I also always will bring it back to serious, bring it back to real, because this disease kills people, and kills people I care about. But I hope to have a good time with you all. I hope this is something that will catch on a little bit. I mean, I'm not trying to be famous, but I want to share this message I have with people, and like-minded people. So I hope you all having a wonderful, blessed day. And if nobody's told you they love you today, I love you. Have a great day.